I was everyone's favorite morning radio personality. Then I got kidnapped. You're going to be the host of my horror anthology podcast. What? I can't do horror. I'm too cheerful and upbeat. I can fix that. And that's how I came to be your host. I'm maybe disembodied, but I'm still happy as Slocum. So sit back and let us invade your safe space. It's the Tales from My Box podcast. Discretion is advised. Welcome to the box. You are receiving the Tales from My Box podcast, transmitting from the Dingy Dungeon studio somewhere in Washington State. Cashing in on another's misfortune is the American dream. Who doesn't fantasize of shorting the stock for huge profits while some poor knob jockey gets left holding the bag? Don't feel bad. You don't know those people. Somebody is going to profit on that foreclosure, drug seizure, bankruptcy liquidation. Might as well be you. This story is about an ambitious young American who runs the extra mile to cash in on a track and field legend in his hometown. Today's triggers include, but are not limited to, guilty feelings, paranormal exploitation, and high school memories. Jordan A. Thomas is the writer. Check out his audiobook Coronation every time you have a free moment. Tales from My Box kicks off season 1 with a spirited spook story second to none. Happy Slocum's my name, and I am your host. Episode 1 is called 1600 Meter Ghost. I was a champion, but not a legend. My time of 4 minutes, 13.13 seconds at the Washington State Track and Field Championships was enough to grab the gold medal. But it barely raised an eyebrow anywhere outside my little community. My abilities got me a scholarship to Oregon. I'm grateful. I truly am. But something gnawed at me long before the state meet. In the final meet of the season, my coach, the great Walt Simpson, pulled me from competition. I didn't need to run. My team didn't need me to run. Coach Simpson wanted to protect me before the district meet. I know he wanted the best for me. It was the right move for someone else in my shoes. For me, it was a violation of trust. I had one last chance to break the 1600 meter record on my home track of 4 minutes, 12.5 seconds. The record has stood since May 15th, 1984. And Coach Simpson said no. He was on that track on that day. But it wasn't his record I wanted to beat. The record belonged to Billy Carter, a senior transfer from small town Georgia.
Billy died on the track just after crossing the finish line. Collapsed in a heap suddenly. As he was lifting his arms in victory. Some heart condition. Probably would have been caught early nowadays. I suspect Coach Simpson and Billy Carter had been friends. Coach doesn't talk about him much, but I've heard around town that they were the only two black guys in the school. So, yeah, chances are they knew each other. But records are meant to be broken. Coach says it all the time. Ever since I was a freshman, I've heard him say it to his athletes. He said it to me, just not on this track. I've come close. I went for it earlier in the season, 4 minutes 14.2 seconds. Coach barely said anything to me about it. I'm not sure if it's a loyalty thing for him, wanting his friend's record to stand forever, or maybe he believes part of the legend, the myth of Billy Carter. Coach has scoffed at such notions before, and I've heard him dismiss spectators who've mentioned it to him as if they were fools. But he always tells me to save it for the final 400. That final 400 has everything to do with the legend of Billy Carter's ghost. I know Coach doesn't approve of my motivations for breaking the record. I understand that. But we live in a social media world, and with the new name, image, and likeness rules in place in college sports, breaking Billy Carter's record could mean a lot of money for me. There's no better way to make money than cashing in on a legend. The legend goes that if a runner can cross the 1,200 meter mark in 3 minutes, 10 seconds or better, the ghost of Billy Carter will appear and race his challenger to the finish. My grandpa said it actually happened to Coach Simpson the year after Billy's death, and it freaked him out so bad that he stopped running and just watched his friend fade into the ether beyond the finish line. That would explain his angry reaction when he discovered I was going to try to make it happen again. When I was asked why I'm doing it, I'd reference the legend that says that once a runner beats Billy, Billy will be free of the track's embrace and can rest in peace. They always looked so choked up and touched by that line of bullshit. I don't mean to be mean, but I noticed the people who get choked up with that idea are the same who actually believed in the legend. And let's clear this up right now. I never believed. I set out to debunk the legend. I was always the skeptic. I was doing it for likes and shares and prestige. And hopefully a sponsorship or two before my college career started. What I know, and what my dad and everyone who knows college track knows, is that I'm not all that special. I'm good, could develop into something, but guys like me wash out all the time without ever making any noise at the next level. It's hard to project how an 18-year-old is going to develop. My best chance to make this track thing pay was to capture people's imagination now, after a big state championship win. It wasn't hard. It got kind of out of hand and took on a life of its own. The entire town was at the field as twilight began to set over our small town stadium. No way I was doing this in the daytime. Not nearly dramatic enough. These people came here to get the tingles during the build-up and then lie to themselves after nothing happens. I was about to destroy the legend. The least I could do is let the crowd have the right atmosphere on this gorgeous summer night. So long as I crossed 1,200 meters by 3:10 and finish by 4:12, Billy Carter would be put to rest. I had to do something I had never done before in order to make that happen. I had to run 14 minutes, 12.5 seconds, and 1,200 meters short of 3:10. So success was hardly guaranteed. I couldn't tell how my father felt about the whole spectacle, except that he made me breakfast that morning the same as he did every morning I had a race. He led me through a short visualization exercise, the same as always. When I left the house that morning, he told me that this wasn't going to be a regular crowd. The scene would be much different than anything I was used to. Boy, was he right. I felt it as soon as I pulled into the parking lot at school. We were in our final days before graduation and everyone was already buzzing. All eyes were on me as I entered the school, far more so than on the day of the state meet. It was surreal passing by people, hearing the whispers, the comments, the encouragement. Raise the dead, Alex, became the mantra. The religious ones in school took a more respectful tone. Free Billy's spirit! It was all so much. I got to my locker, and the thing was decorated with black balloons, a pencil drawing of Billy Carter standing next to Coach Simmons, and a sign reading, "Go, Alex, go." I did this. I created this scene. I'm the one responsible for making these people embrace this craziness. I did it for my own benefit. I grabbed my stuff and went to find Gabby, my girlfriend since sophomore year. That suddenly stopped answering my texts this morning after I shot down her attempts to get me to cancel the event. As if this day wasn't weird enough. Now I have this to deal with. I closed in on Gabby's locker. No sign of her. I checked my phone again. No response to my morning greeting. I hung out by her locker until the first bell rang. We were getting our diplomas in a week, so nobody was taking classes seriously. Gabby could be anywhere, and I didn't need any more drama surrounding today. If she didn't want to talk to me, then so be it. the relationship probably wasn't going to last the summer anyway. Did a couple of interviews for different friends' social media threads. Mutual interests. It gave them something to talk about, and they spread the word far and wide. Word was that some runners from rival schools were talking about wanting to participate. I got a text from my frenemy, Doug, from the school across town, that he wanted to run, but he had been drinking and eating a lot of junk food since the state tournament where he placed 4th. I told him I'd love to have him, but it had to go down tonight, as planned, so if he was up for it, it was shaping up to be a wild scene. And it really was. I've never seen this much excitement for a track and field event, and I was at the center of it. Just after I shot Doug the text, I fielded another interview from a sophomore journalism type who immediately asked about Doug's involvement. Word was getting around fast. I told him the truth. Doug had a better shot at getting the 1200 at 3:10 than I did because that's the type of runner he was. But I had a better chance of running 4:12.5. The sophomore ate it up. It was a little exaggerated, but anything that could add fuel to the fire was good for me. Like Gabby, my mom wasn't a huge fan of the show I was organizing, and had always thought the whole legend was tasteless. I think I may have eased her mind with the idea that I could end the legend once and for all if I beat the record and nothing happened. I tried not to look at my social media accounts because I didn't want the distraction, but it was useless. By 10 a.m., my engagement was double what it had been the night I won state. I pondered that for a moment as I found myself in the empty hallway leading to the gym area. Everyone else was in class. In our school, we had a large lobby area that connected to the basketball gym. The walls of that lobby were covered in photos and trophy cases. So many black and white framed photos lined the walls from the athletes of the past. I never paid much attention to them, except for my photo. I had seen my mom's picture in one of the trophy cases with the rest of the girls' track team, but I never paid attention to any others. In that moment, I went into an odd meditative zone where I hovered my attention over each individual photo from as far back as 1956. People I knew from around town, people I had heard of. A couple went on to big-time colleges and a couple had returned to teach. One of them was in the state legislature. Then I found Billy. He was holding up a gold medal with a shy, almost apologetic smile. For some reason, I expected him to look older, like Coach Simmons. But here he was, just a kid like me. A kid who caught a bad break. I must have stood in front of that photo for 5 minutes, waiting for this black and white memorial to talk to me. Tell me to go for it. You're the one, Alex. You're the guy who will set me free. I felt in that moment that I should feel gross for doing all this, using this guy's legacy to support my own. But I didn't. I didn't feel anything negative at all, and if I had been one to believe in all the superstitious nonsense, I might have made myself believe that Billy was rooting for me that day. The moment didn't last. As I turned around to see 3 kids I didn't know taking pictures of me in that sacred moment with their camera phones. Somehow, I knew that those photos were going to be all over social media, and I was glad that I didn't know they were being taken. If I had known, I probably would have done something cheesy and insincere to play up the moment. I eased past the photographers who stood in solemn silence as if suddenly embarrassed by their trespass. I didn't bother acknowledging them. I knew as soon as they walked into the locker room, they'd be uploading those photos to whatever platform would take them. I was grabbing my warm-up gear and running shoes and disappearing until it was time to run. Didn't know where I was going to go, but I didn't want to be here anymore. Funniest thing, I felt fine about the race. I felt weird about the attention. Like if I had just gone out to the track and ran the race, just me and Billy, it may have meant something. But instead, I cheapened it by trying to cash in on the deal. The locker room was empty, and I could see from down the hall one open locker. The same one I had used all year long. Felt like I should be rushing to the scene, but at this point, seeing my locker ransacked would just be another symptom of the weirdness I created. I approached my locker with care, as if one wrong move would set off a booby trap. My shoes were there. The only thing missing was my track uniform and warm-ups. I looked at the combination lock hanging unbroken, uncut. Someone had used the combination to get in. So, it was a member of the faculty who kept all the combinations for just such emergencies. Immediately I blamed Coach, but it could have been any of the faculty who didn't approve of the spectacle I created. I was beginning to wonder whether the athletic director or superintendent was going to shut down the race before it started. But I couldn't worry about that now. I had to find something to run in. I'll spare you the boring details on how I acquired the necessary shorts, shirt, and warm-ups. I'll just say that I was determined to do this in my school colors regardless of who disapproved. It was no surprise when I arrived at the stadium to see a packed house. I'm not kidding, it was a playoff football game crowd, standing room only. The lights were on as we had arranged. Nobody had pulled the plug so far, so it looked like we were going to have a race on our hands. 3 guys from other schools showed up, all state qualifiers. Doug, the crosstown rival, who I've never beat in a race shorter than 1,600 meters. He placed second in both the 400 and the 800. A.J. Patel, the 6th place finisher in the 1,600 and state champion in the 800. And Tavares Sando, a sprinter who set state records in both the 100 and the 200 meter. And one other guy, Tommy, from my school. He didn't make it out of districts and had no chance. Probably wanted some attention. I guessed he'd start the race and fake pulling up lame somewhere around 400 meters. I shook hands with all the guys and thanked them for coming out. I scanned the crowd and spotted my mom with my dad on the rear sideline. My mother waved and applauded to show her support. No sign of Gabby. Nothing. I saw a patch of her friends at the stands looking snooty and indignant, but no sign of her. How the hell was she so offended by this that she wouldn't talk to me or show up for the event? Didn't matter. I had a race to run, and the sun was dipping toward the horizon of the open west side of the stadium. Then a surprise. The MC introduced Billy Carter's mother to the crowd. I didn't know she still lived in town, but she waved to the crowd as they gave her a massive round of applause. We loaded to the starting line. Everyone's goal was to get to the 3/4 mark by 3:10, so the pace was going to be hard and it would be a gut check in the final quarter. If Billy Carter's ghost showed up, fuck college, we'd all be racing straight to the bank. We got set. The pistol fired. As expected, the pace was far ahead of normal. Doug stayed with me. I saw his strategy and expected him to be on my side until the last 400 when he tried to separate. Tavares jumped out to the lead. We knew he wouldn't last, but he could trigger the legend if he got to the 1200 meter by 3:10. Patel hung behind Doug and me. Tommy came charging around Doug, wanting to challenge Tavares. Doug and I fought off smiles. Sure enough, Tommy passed Tavares just before the quarter turn and pulled up, clutching his hamstring. He'd spend the rest of the evening soaking up attention from whatever girls would give him any, and from what I've heard, fathering his first child. Tavares looked a little annoyed by it, but stayed focused. When it came to hitting the 1200 meter in 3:10, he was the only question because he doesn't run distance. Pushing toward the halfway mark, Doug and I were lockstep. We knew Tavares would fade and Patel would make a move when we were closing in on 1200 meters. I looked up at the official clock as we crossed the halfway mark. 2:10. This was gonna hurt. We had to do the next 400 meters in under a minute, or all this had been a waste of time. I picked it up. Doug and AJ followed suit. Could have cost us a shot at the track record, but hitting 1200 meters at 3:10 is what would bring Billy to the yard. Tavares fell behind. He was done. Up ahead, people were coming onto the track. I needed to focus, but these people were trying to botch it. It was Gabby, Coach Simmons, my parents, and several teachers. Why were they doing this? I chugged harder towards the 3/4 mark. I would not be denied this. I didn't come this far. A struggle up ahead. People from the crowd pulling Gabby and my parents off the track. Pushing Coach Simmons. 3 minutes. We got this. We had to make it. AJ drew even with Doug and me. Coach and Gabby were fighting back. A melee in the stands. The lights went out. 1 by 1. But the clock still ran. 3:05. The last stadium light goes. and several screams rip out across the stadium. I try to make out what's happening with Gabby and my parents, all the while still barreling toward the finish line. A loud, gasping roar comes up from the crowd. I look up at the clock. 3:12. What happened? Did we get it? I look over at Doug, still by my side. AJ is gone, but a figure moves into his place. A glowing, transparent apparition of a young black man in 80s style running gear moves ahead of Doug and me. Doug stays focused, but I know he can see. I can't feel myself breathe anymore. I'm just going, keeping pace, lost in the moment. My focus narrows. I'm running with a ghost, and nothing else matters except beating him to the finish line. It's a dead heat until something hits me. I go down on the track, feel myself skip a couple times. The texture of the track grates my flesh. My race is over. My shot at the track record and legendary status, gone. I eased up to my knees to watch Doug cross the finish line, a body with a head of Billy Carter's ghost. Doug raised his arms in the air as his time flashed on the scoreboard. 4 minutes, 11.9. The record was his. Billy Carter slowed to a stop and faced Doug. The two looked at each other for a moment before Billy gave him a congratulatory nod. The ghost of Billy Carter turned his attention to his mother, who would come out to the track with her hand over her mouth. Her spectral son lifted his hand up to her as if waving through a window before slowly fading into the darkness. He was free. Billy Carter was finally free. Mama Carter dropped to her knees on the tracks and raised her hands in thanksgiving. The stadium went silent except for her feral howls of praise. Then Doug collapsed. It took several seconds for anyone to process what happened. Then, everyone in the stadium rushed to Doug's aid. In moments, I couldn't see through the crowd. I didn't join them. There was no point. Somehow, I knew he was gone. Somehow, Gabby was right. There was more to this legend than I had known. I looked over to the ground next to me. There was Gabby, holding a tiny, rusted over track medal from another time. My girl. The only reason I'm not a legend today. And she says to me, it's not a legend. It's a curse. It was a curse, and she saved me from it. Gabby pulled up and embraced me from behind. He didn't know. Billy wasn't the first. He wasn't the first. You didn't know. You didn't know. We sat there and watched in silence until Doug was taken away. So many scenes happening at once. Coach came and said something. I would talk to him later and understand what he said. My parents said something. Everyone said something. I sat and stared with my girl holding me up. I spotted Patel, still standing just past the 1,200-meter mark. He was doing something with his hand, something. It seemed religious. Not sure what it was. So many people talking, trying to say something that meant something. But I couldn't talk. All I could do was think. I brought Doug into this for my own gain. And now, I swore by all the gods that I never believed in, I would find a way to free him.
Now, I don't know what that kid's problem is. He got all the fame and prestige without being the one who had to die for it. And he got the girl. That's a quadruple dog win if you ask me. Get rid of that kid's guilt complex and you have a future U.S. Senator on your hands. Speaking of guilt, I would be doing all who listen a grave disservice if I didn't tell you all about Jordan A. Thomas's debut audiobook. Coronation is a 10-hour audio presentation about a teenage sword fighter who engineers an escape from a concentration camp run by vampires. Highbrow entertainment at its finest. Coronation will leave you breathless and wondering why everything else you're listening to sucks so much ass. That's Coronation by Jordan A. Thomas, available on Spotify and wherever legendary audiobooks are sold. Stay right here for a sample chapter. Then check out the links for your favorite distributor, Season 1 merch, and the Tales from My Box social pages. Until next time, don't open the box.
Keegan, Chapter 18. I know all about cars, but I've never experienced one until now. The heavy equipment we use for the temple, loaders, backhoes, and a couple of flatbed pickup trucks gave me plenty of experience behind the wheel. Never at this speed, though. We're shooting down the desert road with the speedometer pinned at 120 miles per hour. It's an insane speed and I'm not in control of it. Dash lights cast weird shadows over the face of the most gauntly-looking human I've ever encountered. Poke has the wheel and my life in his hands. It's horrifying and exhilarating at the same time. A wire spring in the back of my seat has popped out of place, and I can't seem to shift into a position where it isn't sticking me in the back. A smell of old cigarillos makes me hold my breath for long periods while Poke drones on and on about his life story and the vampire hunting business. What I've learned so far: if you sever a vampire's head clean off the neck, the head will remain preserved and you can turn it in at a clearinghouse and collect a bounty. However, if the head does not come off clean, everything will turn to ash and you put your life in danger for nothing. I met an Australian fella named Michael Kelly. He was doing trick boomerang shows with a carnival I fell in with after my whore of a mother kicked me out of the house. We got to talking about the occult, and since my whore of a mother was all into that shit since the time I can remember, I kept up in conversation with him. Must have liked me some because he took me under his wing and taught me everything he knew about boomerangs. Once I started hunting vampires, I made sassy here. He taps his jade boomerang with his bony finger. He has the damn thing mounted on his dashboard, as if we might have to battle a vampire while going 120 miles per hour. Kind of a tribute to the master. Poke chatters non-stop for an hour. The calf muscles in my leg begin to cramp up from the nervous contractions I'm making. We can see maybe 20 feet in front of us. Anything appearing in the road becomes instant death. But Poke seems unfazed by it all. He keeps talking and talking. I rode solo for a long time until I met my wife, Judy Mayflower, the love of my life. We were both trying to collect a bounty on Adam Silverspike. He was a famous first-generation ghoulie, older than the Bible. Silverspike was about to split my dome with some ancient battle axe when Judy came up behind him and rolled his head. Saved my life. We never left each other's side until the day she died. He's making me think of Lexi right now. We spent all our lives together, and when it came down to it, she'd rather stay in our little village and die than run off with me. I'll get over her. Plenty of girls my age in the city of Provo. That's where Poke says we're going to turn in the bounty on the Sentinel's head. My love is vengeance now. Went off and got hooked up with some junkies in Seattle. Got myself a blood disease that'll ash up even the most purebred creature of the night. Poke adopted vampire hunting as his life's calling one day on the set of Battle in the Bush, a B-grade movie about Australian cowboys. The film crew turned into a bunch of hungry vampires and began snacking on all the pretty actors during the film's wrap party. Poke made it out with 5 heads and a new career. Or so he says. Where are we going? I ask. Poke shuts up. He stops gabbing on a dime. I wish I had asked an hour ago. My appreciation for his silence lasts a couple of minutes before it gets creepy. I look over at him, and he smiles at me. We're going to see that pretty face of yours in action, he tells me. I hope I'm wrong about his meaning. A flash of a human form out the corner of my eye, and in a split second, he's clipped off the passenger side corner of the van. Poke keeps the gas pedal down without a second thought to the person he just hit. I look up in the rearview mirror and watch as the guy laying in the road gets to his feet and starts walking down the road as if nothing happened. He's dead already, kid. Don't give him a second thought. There are plenty of them waiting for you. As the words leave his lips, another figure appears off the side of the road in Poke's headlights. We shoot past him. Even at high speed, I'm able to see the dead look on his face. Vampires? I ask. Mongrels. Vampire breeding has to this point in history been selective. Humans with a very particular genetic coding were considered candidates. You just saw what happens when a human without the vampire gene gets turned. Someone I know is building an army of them. What does that have to do with me? I inquire. You are going to fight them, he informs me. A mob of mongrel vampires appears in the roadway at the edge of Poke's headlights. He lets his foot off the gas, but it's too late to keep us from slamming into the crowd. The cracking of bones under tires and thudding of bodies hitting the side of the van create an unnatural rhythm. Poke hangs onto the steering wheel as the bodies veer us from one side of the road to the other. He lets out a howl of laughter as a vampire dressed in a 3-piece suit disappears under his tire. You want to know how my old man taught me how to swim? No, I say. Cocksucker took me out to the lake and walked me to the end of the dock. He looks down at me and tells me to kick if I want to live. The van skids to a stop, and the writhing vampires engulf us, well aware of our presence. What does that mean? I blurt out as a once attractive woman in tattered clothes bares her fangs at me through the window. I know. Who says that to a kid? Long story short, he tossed my ass in. And I swear I ain't shitting you here. I went out of body. Like I could see myself drowning in the nasty water with the algae and the fish shit. But I could hear my old man's voice yelling at me through the water. Kick! 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 I'm listening, but I'm fixed on a long-haired Asian vampire smashing his fist into the windows far too many times to leave his hand intact. What you getting at, sir? I don't want to know the answer. He reaches over and grabs Sassy off the dashboard with a wild gleam in his eyes and a giddy chuckle in his speech. Kick or die, buckwheat! I see him hit the electric window controls on the driver's side console. Stop! Don't! Are you crazy? The window retracts, and I'm stabbing vampires before it's halfway down. Why are you doing this? I yell. I'm terrified. For the first time in my life, survival is in question. Shut up and kick! He claps back. No choice. Right foot back to my chest as I pivot in my seat and kick the door with everything I've got. The door flies open. I'm out of the van and striking faster than a bad memory. Nothing else matters at this moment. In my zone, practicing my religion. Working. Haven't felt like this since... I can't remember. Got a task. Kill vamps. Apply my systematic method of obliteration upon their punk asses. I'm swatting heads off the undead like it's a new dance craze. I glance back at Poke on the opposite side of the van. He's got his boomerang in his hand, and he's fighting off the monsters as if born to do so. I'm not scared. This feels like home. I spear a skinny vamp with an afro through the heart as he dives off the top of the van and toss him into a crowd of bloodsuckers surrounding me before slashing the necks of two vamps behind me on the counterswing. A quick pivot sees my blade across the top of a charging vamp's forehead. The top of his head comes off, but the damn thing still stands. Over at the van, Poke hangs back in the driver's seat, smoking his cigarillo, watching me fight. Okay, kid, quit showing off and get in the van. As he pulls away, I skip out of the diving grab of a vamp in a biker jacket and slash my way past a hissing soccer mom, diving into the passenger seat in full stride before chest kicking the old man who dove in after me. Poke hits the gas and mows down a line of bloodsuckers. He looks over at me with the most serious expression. You know, you have a moral obligation to use your fighting skills to help your fellow humans survive this ghoulie epidemic. Epidemic? No one believed these things existed until a year ago. A couple of online videos surface here and there. Unexplained murders in the thousands sweep the nation, and it has become quite apparent to the people of the world my life's work was always justifiable and important. I do believe myself a chosen one of sorts, and I would like to extend the invitation to you to join me. He nudges the steering wheel to clip a vamp with the corner of the van. I don't owe anybody anything, I reply. Silence. Seems like a full minute. Disappointing, Poke deadpans. You can make a buttload of money. He gestures to the head of the village sentinel perched on the console between us. This guy is rare. He'll fetch a couple grand easy. I'm going to take you to Provo. You'll see how bad it is. If you want to collect this bounty with me, I'll be happy to give you a cut. You kind of helped. How did you know where to take me to fight the vampires? Poke takes a long drag off his cigarillo and thinks well before he speaks. The thought process shows in his face. He's weighing all the angles to decide whether it's a good idea to tell me or not. They seem to be migrating toward your village.